Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another Nasir session. Today again we're joined by brother Imran and brother Saad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Hope you're well.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh wa maghfiratuh.
Can I just say, because I can see on the screen there, he looks like incredibly taller than me. And even though he is slightly taller than me,
quite a bit taller.
It's just that his posture, he's slightly.
I'm
dipping, you know, where
I'm leaning right at the back. Yeah. These guys are not even.
I'm saying my sofa's dipping. If I sit here, Allahumma barik. But the thing is, because my posture's messed up. I look smaller, but I'm not that small.
Allahumma barik. So today's question is on the issue of lowering the gaze. Now, someone asked the question and they said, is it permissible to watch female YouTubers? It was a brother asking, is it permissible to watch female YouTubers on YouTube? Now he specifically mentioned hijabi YouTubers, right? But inshallah, the discussion is going to be quite general regarding the general rulings regarding this from, like we mentioned in the previous session that we did, from the scholars and from the Quran and the Sunnah, according to the understanding of the scholars. None of you can come and say, oh, I believe this, or my opinion is this, I think this. Every single thing that you say regarding an ayat or regarding a hadith has to be from the ulama.
It's true, because just people need to understand why we set those conditions. Is because, you see, there's two extremes of people. There's some people who will just mention statements of scholars all day, but they won't give any evidence, and that's wrong. That's one extreme. The other extreme is that they'll just give evidence, but they won't mention scholars. That's also wrong. The reason why the first one is wrong, that you mention scholars all day, but you don't mention evidence, is because scholars are not a proof. No scholars, even a Sahabi, is not a proof on his own. Rather, the Quran and the Sunnah and the Ijma', these are the consensus of the Muslims. These are what our evidences are, right? So you can't just mention a sheikh without mentioning the evidence that the sheikh used, right? In the same way you can't do that, you can't mention the evidence without the understanding of the sheikh. The reason for that is because we're not scholars. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if it is you that does not know. Do you see? So, me, I don't have the ability or the capacity, and neither do you or does brother Sa'ad or overwhelming majority of people, to go to the Quran and Sunnah and extract evidence ourselves.
Exactly.
So because of this, we have to rely upon the scholars. Do you see?
And the best of scholars are the Sahaba
and their students,
etc. So we want to start off by as always laying a foundation, right? Let's start off with the asl, the original essence, right? Now correct me if I'm wrong, but as we've been taught, that the original essence of any matter when it comes to the dunya, not the religion, when it comes to the dunya, is permissible until an evidence comes and makes it impermissible. Right? Now, lowering the gaze and the issue of just looking at a woman is from those issues which are from the dunya. Right? So the original essence would be that it is permissible until proven impermissible. So are there any evidences from the Quran, from the Sunnah, according to the understanding of the scholars, which would restrict this otherwise unrestricted, otherwise general foundation to certain scenarios, certain situations?
Right. So I just wanted to just mention that because I don't want people to misunderstand. When he said that the general rule is the default position of dunya matters is that everything is halal till proven haram, that doesn't apply to the religion. Okay?
Yes.
Because some people might try to use this, because some people are like, Akhi, you say we can't celebrate Mawlid, you bring an evidence to say that you can't celebrate Mawlid. And it doesn't work for the religion like that, because we already know that our religion is complete. Allah completed the religion. So now you want to bring something and say this is a religious practice, but then you need to prove this is a religious practice, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I've perfected the religion, I've completed it. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم إسلام دينا, right? Islam Medina. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I finished your religion for you. Now you want to add something that is not in the religion that Allah had completed that day. So you need to bring an evidence to say it is part of the religion. So that's why the religion, you can't say everything is halal until proven to be haram.
Exactly.
But when it comes to the dunya, it is different now.
It's just the dunya.
Okay? Like for example, if I see an animal that's got 100 eyes, and horns and all these kind of things, bro, you give me a shank, inshallah, we say Allah's name, we can slaughter it and eat it. You can't come and say to me that animal is haram just because it's got 100 eyes because it looks strange. You have to prove to me that this animal is haram. That you have to prove to me somehow, based on textual evidence, that this falls under the categories of impermissible animals.
Like, for example, if the animal was dead, you found it dead.
Right, because
there's a specific evidence in the Quran, so you can't eat dead animals. And then there's any more specific, say if they're in the water, that's a whole different story. Right. But I'm saying, so basically we need an evidence from the Quran, from the Sunnah, in order to make something from the dunya.
From the dunya.
Haram. And in order to make something from the religion, permissible, requires an evidence.
So summary is, everything pertaining to the religion is haram until proven halal. Everything pertaining to the dunya is halal until proven haram. Okay. So you're asking for the evidence is here.
Fantastic.
There's many evidences. We can go to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but let's go straight to the ayah, okay? Allah subhanahu said, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُم.
One of you just want to quickly translate that for the people.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, say to the believing men, lower from your gaze. Lower your gaze.
Okay.
وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُم. And protect your private parts. Okay. Lower your gaze and protect your private parts. And then in the next ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the believing women to do the same. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغُضُّضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ. Lower from your gaze, believing women, because it will protect your private parts.
Okay, so both the men and the women were told to lower their gazes in order to protect their private parts.
Okay, exactly. Now you wanted an understanding from the scholars.
Ulama. Agreed.
Inshallah ta'ala, I have with me here a book in which it mentions Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, his fatwa on this issue.
Okay.
Now why have I chosen specifically Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah? His name says it all. Shaykh al-Islam.
Which means the Shaykh of Islam. I'm not saying that he's obviously like
he's big.
He's big.
This is Shaykh al-Islam. He got that title for a reason, yeah? And no one's going to deny his status. No one's going to deny his level of knowledge, his understanding of the statements of the Salaf and so on and so forth.
But like, we're not saying he's infallible or anything like that. That's what I was going to say earlier. We're not saying he's infallible.
No, of course.
But he's a very, very big
scholar. He's very high. And specifically his area, even though he was what you call mutafannin, he was an expert in all different fields of the Sharia. So much so that they said, if he was speaking about one field of the Sharia, for example, hadith or Arabic or whatever, you would think that he's mastered this and nothing else. But even then, the one out of all of these fields which he was stronger in than anything else, even though he was a master of all the others, was tafsir of the Quran. So what did he say? He said this issue of lowering the gaze and the women covering and not looking at the women and so on and so forth. He said this has been prevented, and هذا سدا للذريعة. It's a preventative measure to prevent a harm from occurring. What is that harm? That harm is zina. It is fornication. He said, بل هذا من مقدمات الفاحشة. The looking at a woman is from the beginnings, is from the introduction of what you call fahisha. Fahisha is filth and filthy things.
It's one of the triggers.
It's the trigger. It's the muqaddimah. It's the introduction. It's the sniff. You haven't eaten the cake. You just sniffed it. You whiffed it. But you're gonna you've sniffed it, so you're gonna go to it now, right? So because you've looked, now you're gonna walk towards it. Because for this reason, it was made haram. And his student, Shaykh Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, you can also call him Shaykh al-Islam. Ibn al-Qayyim. He can also be given the title of Shaykh al-Islam. He said the same thing. He said lowering of the gaze is the foundation. Look at the language he used. It's the foundation. أصلا لحفظ الفرج. It is the foundation of lowering, of protecting your private parts. Meaning, can I build a house without a foundation?
No.
Can I protect my private parts without lowering my gaze?
No.
That's what he's trying to say. Lowering your gaze is a foundation to protect your private. It's a foundation to protect you from zina. In other words, if you're not lowering your gaze, bro, whether you're looking at Hijabi YouTube or you're looking at a woman in a movie or you're looking at a woman in the streets, if you're not lowering your gaze, that's a foundation that you do not have, which means you're gonna ultimately fall into zina of some sort.
No, that'll protect you and us.
And it's a very serious issue. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So the evidence is that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to lower our gazes so that we may protect our private parts.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, obviously, there are certain people in our families who it is permissible to look at, right? Like, for example, your mother, your sister, your wife.
Yeah.
So, Why is that an exception from that rule?
Actually, that's a very good question that you just asked. So remember we said, why is it permissible to look at your mum? Remember we said at the beginning that the general ruling for looking is permissibility. Okay? You can look because it's from the dunya, right? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came to restrict it, He came to restrict a particular type of woman to whom you can look at. Do you see what I'm saying? The same way, Allah subhanahu, is business permissible?
Business.
Yeah. Is business transaction permissible? But did Allah make some business transactions haram?
No.
Right, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made riba haram and other sorts of business transactions. He made them impermissible because of particular elements that they might have in them. Do you see? So not all of business is haram, but particular business is haram. That's why they're saying not all of looking at women is haram, but some.
That's student loans.
So again, student loans is haram because it's got riba in it, right? So what kind of women can I look at? I can look at the women who are from my maharim, which basically means any woman I'm a mahram to.
Okay.
So am I mahram to my mum?
Yes.
So I can look at her now. Am I mahram to
your mom's sisters?
My mom's sister, my khala, my mom's sisters. I'm mahram to my dad's sisters. I'm mahram to. In fact, if you guys want this in more detail, you can click the link of the video below. Who am I mahram to? Okay. You can watch that video. We go through it in detail. But anyone who you are mahram to, your daughters, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
What about your wives?
So good. Now, the reason why lowering your gaze from a woman was haram was what? To protect your private parts.
No, yes.
But we were told, again, protecting your private parts is haram except with your wife.
What's the evidence?
The ayah in Surah Al-Mu'minun and Surah Al-Ma'arij. That's why I said, you protect your private parts except from your spouses and إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Okay? Except that which your right hand possesses.
So again, there's an evidence for that.
Evidence for that.
Specify
do you see
okay.
what I'm saying? Now, of course, another type of woman that you might look at is a woman who, you're looking to get married to her. Okay? But again, that doesn't mean you can just look at her for the sake of looking at her. Only when you're seriously involved. When you're involved, you've gone to the wali, you've had meetings, the dad's involved, then, it's serious, you can now look. And again, an evidence from the Prophet ﷺ came to mention that to us. And if they want more detail, they can go to Muslim Survival Guide, the course that we have called Finding Bait. In it, I go into that detailed issue about how to look at a woman for marriage and the evidence pertaining to her. And of course, another reason is due to necessity, okay? And necessity means that it's like, it's life or death kind of thing. You have to do this. You have to look at this particular woman, right?
Like a doctor who's going to do surgery.
Right, exactly. And there's no other option. So this woman, she can show her, the doctor can look at her, right? He can look at her aura, he can look at her face, or he can look at her body, or whichever part it is. He could look at whatever it is because it's a necessity now. But he can't if she can find a female doctor. Go to the female doctor. You see what I'm saying? But even then, it's not like the woman can take off her whole top in front of the doctor. She's only allowed to show, if it's the arm, she only does this. She only shows him what from the arm he can look at. You see what I'm saying?
You mentioned a point earlier. You said that.
So all apart from that is haram.
You said that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala said that lowering the gaze is from the asl of preventing, fahsha,
yes.
Zina, etc.
Yes.
So, if you could expand upon that. So when he says it's the asl of preventing zina and fahsha, etc. What does he mean? Where does he come from?
Like, what's the connection, in other words, between lowering your gaze and falling into fornication?
Okay, so I think you mentioned it when you mentioned the statement of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, where he mentioned that the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to lower our gazes for the men and for the female is because it is saddu dhira'i. It's a prevention, right, of harm. And the harm that he was referring to was zina, okay? And Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he actually expands on what is the connection between a person looking and leading them to zina. I have his book here, Ad-Da'u wad-Dawa, meaning the diseases and its cures, okay? It's a very famous book of Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah. And there's a chapter in which he talks about, after mentioning many different types of sins and the harms that sins can do to a person's body and their akhirah and etc. He then goes into the issue of how do the sins enter into the abd from the beginning? Like, how does the sin enter into the slave? How does he actually end up doing the sin in the first place? And he mentions that there's 4 ways that it can happen. The first way that he mentions is through looking. Okay? It's through looking. And he mentions that the way it happens is the following. He says that a person, when he looks at something, okay, what's going to happen? That looking is going to allow a idea or a concept to form in his head. Okay, so imagine you were walking down the streets, you saw a female, you go home, and that thought comes back to you, like, oh, I saw somebody, right?
Okay.
Especially if it was affected with shahwa. Okay, it says later that idea in your head, it forms into a thought.
Okay.
And when you continue to think about it, later on it becomes shahwa, it becomes a desire. Now you actually desire this person. Now you're desiring to, to be with the opposite gender and do something. It said when you keep on looking, when that continuously happens, soon it becomes an irada, it becomes a will. Okay? And that will does nothing except but it gets stronger and stronger to the point that it's necessary that the person is going to fall into the action. It's necessary that the person is going to end up committing the haram. And so for that reason, right, we can see that when a person prevents himself from looking at the beginning, okay, it will stop him from going into the harm that will come after. And then there's a statement that, Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions, he says, look, as-sabru ala ghadd al-basar, having patience, okay, and preventing yourself by going through the patience of actually lowering your gaze, it is easier for you than to be patient upon that which will come to you after, because you didn't lower your gaze.
SubhanAllah.
And what that basically means is a person doesn't lower his gaze, okay? That takes him through that little path that I just took you through, and a person commits zina, he gets a girl pregnant. But wouldn't it have been easier for you to be patient upon lowering your gaze than now you have a woman that's pregnant, you have a child on the way, and your parents don't know about it? That stress that's going to come to you, it's more difficult for you to be patient upon that than it would have been if
the fact that you got a woman who broke her heart, or she broke her
destroyed
heart,
her family, her life as well. Okay,
now you have to be patient now.
Maybe you've endangered the soul of the child that the woman's bearing because she might want to go for an abortion
in the next life.
And
you have to be patient with this now.
But
it would have been easier to have been patient in lowering your gaze.
Exactly. So it's not befitting for the mind to even think, it's so much more easier for you to just lower your gaze, right? there's so much more khair that will come for you. But if you slip up and you let your looks wander around, and remember the looking here is not just restricted to the zina as well, okay? It's not that the looking will lead you just to zina, okay? But that's one of the things that he mentions. Rather, looking can lead you to other things, okay? That's, for example, if a person he sees in movies and he sees people, they're doing weird stuff and, methods of killing and stuff, and then you hear about people killing people in a certain manner. Yeah. It's because you saw something. It became an idea, a desire for it, an irada, and eventually a stealing.
You looked at something that. Yeah, as in Surah Al-Hijr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is Surah Al-Hijr, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us not to look at that which is in the hands of the people, because you're always looking at the riches that the people have that might bring a desire to now steal.
Exactly.
So one of the foundations of sins in general is what? To look.
It's looking, okay?
So it's not just women that you should
and that's just one of the doors of sin that Ibn al-Qayyim he mentions. There are others, but for this purpose, looking was the one that we...
And it's sad that we live in a day and age where people try to justify watching, sisters on YouTube and they've got makeup on and, they look attractive.
In films, people say, watching films.
And all these things. It's very sad because the crimes of looking are seriously great. Even if you say, I'm doing this for the sake of da'wah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من ذلك. How can you say that I'm doing da'wah through a sin? How could you say that, akhi? If I give you this cup of water and it's got 100% pure water, this bottle of water, and I say there's 99% pure water, 1% urine, are you going to drink it?
No.
But I say, but it's 99% pure. Why are you being difficult like that?
Because 1%.
Right. So then So then the action has to have two parts to it. 50% of an action is sincerity, a good intention, and 50% is obeying Allah and His Messenger
Following
the Prophet. So now you might have a good intention. I want to give da'wah through looking at hijabi YouTubers or whatever else it might be. But the point is you've only got the intention, but you've fallen short on the other 50%. So you won't drink 99% pure water because of the 1% urine in there. How do you expect Allah to take an action that's 50% impure?
Okay. So I've got another question, right? You mentioned ayat and you mentioned understanding of the scholars on those ayat, but obviously no one understood the Quran better than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he himself, his speech, his actions were the best, tafsir of the Quran.
Of course.
So are there any instances to do with lowering the gaze that occurred directly with the Prophet, or where the Prophet commanded something, or the Prophet said something? Are there any instances or any hadith that come to us regarding this issue?
Look, there's one hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay? And if I'm correct, the hadith is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, okay? where a woman, she came to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and presented herself for marriage for the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, I want to marry myself off to you. I want to marry you. And what did the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? He looked up, okay? Understand this. The Sahabi mentioned in the narration, right? That the Prophet, he looked up, he glanced at her, and then he looked back down again. Okay? Now, this we learn two things, right? Number one, the permissibility for you to look at a woman, for the sake of marriage. Okay? In a situation where you're looking to get married, the permissibility of looking at her for that reason. Okay? But what you also see is, what did the Prophet do? His head was down. He only looked at her because of the marriage issue, and after that, he looked back down.
Yeah.
So what does that show?
Looking up meant it was down.
Exactly. Okay. So the fact that he looked up shows it was down, and when he looked up, he then brought his eyes down again, which shows to us that for the Messenger ﷺ, his actions was he wouldn't look at a female unless there was a need to do so. For example, marriage. Okay. And which we mentioned that whatever an evidence comes to show to us that it's permissible to do so, then we do it for that reason. For example, the marriage issue. So from that we know the actions of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he wouldn't look at females, okay, unless there was a need for it. Rather, he would always lower his gaze. And even
can you also just explain? Yeah, because this is the Messenger alayhi sallam. Not only is he our role model in all of these issues, but particularly in da'wah. Okay,
Sahih.
The Messenger alayhi sallam, his shyness.
Mm-hmm.
Looking is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't look.
Mm-hmm.
But just to show you his shyness, please can you...
For example, it was narrated about the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he was more shy than a female, a virgin female on her first night. Okay, and we all know how a virgin would be, especially on her first night, how shy she would be.
I know.
Okay,
she's not married yet. Inshallah soon.
And so the narrator is telling us, the Sahabi, right, that the Prophet ﷺ was more shy than that. Okay. And that just shows you how shy he was. But not even that. There are narrations that come to us when some of the Sahabiyat, okay, the female companions, they will come to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they would ask female related questions, right, to learn, to get rulings for. And
like personal
women issues. And what would the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? Okay, like this is the Messenger. He would be so shy, he wouldn't even have the ability to, like talk. He wouldn't even talk due to his shyness. Instead, Aisha radiallahu anha, she would see the Messenger and see that he's getting shy, that she would take this woman, okay, the Sahabiya, and take her outside of the house of the Messenger, somewhere into the city, and then explain to her the answer to the question that she had, because she understood how shy the Messenger was, that he didn't even want to talk about these issues.
And the reason why I really wanted you to mention that, Akhi, is because this is the Messenger's da'wah.
Exactly.
And now you have people in this day and age who are saying we're doing da'wah, and they might potentially encourage, to look, and might encourage others to look, and might watch themselves, and say this is da'wah. Well, it's very sad.
What about someone accidentally look falls upon it? There's a hadith, right, in Jami' al-Tirmidhi.
The hadith of Jarir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhu, in which he mentioned to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam of an accidental look towards a woman, and then the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he commanded him to look away, right? And the reason for this is because of the other hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu explains this, in which the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam told Ali radiallahu anhu, or in which Ali radiallahu anhu narrated that Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said that the first look, okay, it's an accidental look. It's from you. It's accidental. You might accidentally look at her. The second look is from shaitan, which means the second one is the one you're going to get a sin from. The previous hadith that I mentioned to you, Imam Mubarak-Furi rahimahullah has the best explanation of Sunan al-Tirmidhi when he explained the hadith. What did he mention?
Again, scholars.
And by the way, scholar from the subcontinent.
Basically from Pakistan, India region.
He's from the India region, but it's all the ulama in that region. Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So these were the ones there. So what did he say? He said this hadith shows that the accidental look is the only one that's permissible. The second one, the one where you look after, that's when the sin starts. So imagine, for example, some people might be watching, like a movie, for example. Yeah. Movie. This is what I'm saying. This is why watching a movie is not permissible. Like, remember, you're looking, you're seeing a woman. You turn away to get your popcorn and you look back. You just keep looking back. You can't say it's an accident or look anymore. This is why I don't
understand.
People
do that and they're like, oh, has she gone yet? No, okay. She's still there.
Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? That sometimes you try and watch the scene, you'll try and put your hand like this, yeah, but you're looking back. Do you see her? So there's music in movies, all these things, you know.
And also we know that there's a principle in usul al-fiqh that if ever there comes a amr, a command, shows obligation, and the Sahabi clearly said that the Prophet commanded me to look away. So
I don't understand how people can now justify this and say this is, something khair.
So the bottom line is, when it comes to the issue of looking at the opposite gender and lowering the gaze, yes, the original essence was permissibility until proven impermissible, and now there's come evidences in the in abundance from the Quran and the Sunnah to say that looking at a person of the opposite gender is impermissible, apart from these certain people, or apart from in these certain situations, these certain circumstances. But other than that, it's one thing that definitely should be avoided. Nowadays it's quite sad. You've got people, like when people start practicing, for example, and they start implementing these in their lives, they get called like, bro, you guys, you're turning too extreme. Why are you not doing that? Why are you not doing this? Like it's just a look. People say, we're just friends and this and that. And it's something that I think really, really is affecting the youth and the young people of today, and they need to know that like this is it's one of those issues where it's pretty clear cut.
It's pretty big, man.
And as the brothers mentioned, that all the ulama, the scholars have said regarding how the looking is the beginning of everything else. And people even say, for example, what's the term? Love at first sight. Like just that one look can be,
arrow shaitan, huh?
It's just that one look can just be, detrimental to everything.
Look, how many sisters are messaging? We get the emails every day. How many brothers message? I'm pregnant. Dad, I want to kill myself. He left me. He did. It all started from the look.
Yeah, just like to mention, right? I mentioned this in one of the Child with My Bite episodes that we did, didn't it? About the guy that was basically put on death row in America, and because he was found basically raping young girls, and he had their body parts cut up in the house and etc. etc. So he was being sent for.
When did you mention that?
It was in previous.
Oh, we never went out.
We never released
it. Oh, okay. Anyway, so before he was put for his execution, they asked him, how this all occurred. They interviewed him just before he was sent for his execution. He said, look, I didn't have any problems when I was a kid. Perfect family, good father, good mother, good childhood, good upbringing, good education. Everything was good. Where did it all start from? Looking at porn.
Pornography,
just looking at pornography led from one thing to another, and like I mentioned, like Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, right? It leads from a look to thinking to etc. Eventually it goes from high desire and will to the point where you're going to do something haram. And it'll carry on. And the other thing is that remember, sins, they give birth to other sins. So just by looking, this man became an individual that raped young little girls, cut off their body parts, kept them in his house, right? And eventually put onto death row.
And you know what's even mad here? Is that what you just said, this is in the Quran. I said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا zina, don't go near to zina.
Exactly.
Meaning zina has roads that lead to it. There's a ladder to zina, and each rung is a step closer to zina. But when you get to zina, Allah said, فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. Once you get to zina, zina now leads to an even more filthier path.
Yeah.
Murder, shirk.
Exactly.
So I think we'll end it there, brothers and sisters. Jazakallahu khairan for watching. If you do have any other questions that that you would like to ask, do drop in an email to nasihasession@gmail.com. Even though I think the channel's called Nasiha Sessions, but the email's Nasiha Session. There's no S at the end. So we'll leave you there, inshallah. Like I said, jazakallah for watching. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.